Welcome to the show. I have a great show planned for you this week. Later on, I'll have with me Paull IV, who is president and broker at Paull Associates. We'll be talking all about the real estate market here in the Valley. It's that time of year. Spring's just around the corner. But first, we'll start with some of our usual features. And one thing I want to mention, speaking of spring, is that we really need to clean up. I mean, I think throughout the Valley, so many places you see, signs all over telephone poles. You drive along the public highways, and there's signs for this business or this event or whatever it may be, and it really just is kind of making a mess of our area. And when people come in from out of the area and they see that, it just looks shabby. We all need to do a better job of making sure those things are straightened up. I get it that people want to advertise their events or things that are going on and stuff like that. And if you feel the need to do that, do it for a short period of time, then go back and collect them and take them down. It just makes things just look not as nice. And if you go into a lot of other cities around the country, you just don't see that. I mean, there are ordinances and they're kind of enforced where people can't do that. It just kind of junks the place up, so to speak, and certainly doesn't help us attract people into this area. So just a little thought there, that if we can try to do a better job of that, I think it will help our overall community a lot more. I give a legal tip here this week as well. I always like to do that, and that's when hiring a lawyer, ask about their trial results. And the reason I say that is that so many lawyers want to say, well, I've settled this case for this, or I've settled that case for that, and that's fine to have settlements. And I know, like, I've even had some good settlements that I'm proud of as well. But if you see a lawyer who can't tell you like where they've ever been to trial or gotten a good result at trial, that's problematic, because that probably means they're going to take whatever the last offer is, or whatever the top offer is that the insurance company or the corporation on the other side, whatever it may be, is willing to offer them. And that may not be like what your case is really worth. But if they're afraid to go to trial, or just never go to trial because they don't have the resources to do it, don't have the experience to do it, the talent or knowledge to do it, whatever it may be, then that's a problem, because that insurance company on the other side is going to know that, and they're not going to offer what the case is worth. They're going to offer whatever they can get by with offering, knowing that that lawyer's going to take whatever it is they happen to offer. So ask about trial results, look into them, research it. If somebody can't point to the trial results they have, then that's probably a problem, probably not the lawyer that you want. I'll give a quote here as well this week. This one comes from Theodore Roosevelt, and a lot of great quotes from President Roosevelt, but this one I thought was particularly applicable with today's world. He said, "If you could kick the person in the pants responsible for most of your trouble, you wouldn't sit for a month." I thought that was kind of comical and entertaining, but also very true. And the reason I bring that one up is that so many times in today's world we see everyone blaming anyone else for their troubles but themselves. I was just talking to someone this morning about social media, and I've talked about social media a little bit on this show before, but I think that social media is good in a number of ways, but it also, for whatever reason, has just given everyone an opportunity, at least, to just complain about anything they can complain about. Not everyone does that, but a lot of people do, and it's a lot of negativity. I think if we could follow kind of the rule of like, hey, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all, which is something like my grandmother used to always say, I think we'd be a lot better off. But also we can extend that to stop blaming everybody else for your troubles. I mean, just kind of look and say, okay, what can I do to get myself better in this situation? How did I contribute to this particular situation? How can I, maybe improve in the future? There's so many times that I look at different things that I find myself in and say, man, I really screwed this up. And try not to make the same mistake twice. Sure, are there other things that sometimes contribute to whatever may be troubling me? Absolutely. But if you go around talking about it and blaming people, you're really just not doing a service to yourself. You're doing a disservice. Control the things you can control, do something about them, and you'll be a lot better off realistically. So anyway, just some thoughts there this week. We are going to take a break, but when I come back, I'll have with me Paull IV, president and broker at Paull Associates. We'll be talking all about the real estate market. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
Disasters happen. Pick the team that takes care of them all. Powered by offices in Wheeling, Morgantown, and Pittsburgh, Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration is ready to handle any size emergency at a moment's notice. We have the right people, knowledge, and equipment to respond 24 hours a day.
I'm Bob Huggins. When disaster strikes your home or business, tell your insurance provider you prefer the restoration company the Mountaineers call, Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration.
recommended by the highest authorities. Danoon Lumber.
Looks like a bad one's coming. Yeah. Right?
Welcome back to the show. This is my favorite time each week when I have a guest with me, and this week's no different. I have with me Lee Paull IV, who is the president and broker of Paull Associates. Lee, thanks for being here on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Been here before, but it's been quite some time. I think it was 2016, really in the early stages of the show the last time you were here, so good to have you back. And, you know, Paull Associates continues to grow. You know, people think of you as being Wheeling because your business has been here for so long through, you know, the generations, but, you know, now offices also in Marshall County and Brooke County and Belmont County, so you're kind of all over the place here in the Valley.
Yes, it's interesting. We've grown, and it's been a great ride with our new agents coming in this spring. We have 5 new agents in our real estate. And they're all just doing wonderful. And you know, with technology, we're doing things differently there. But you know, growing in the different areas, we like where we are right now because you do have to take advantage of or take care of a bunch of different things, you know, with every office. So
you know, you mentioned that about technology, and it's interesting because now when I look at the Sunday paper, I mean, you don't even really see the houses like you used to because everything's kind of moving online.
Right.
People looking there, so you kind of have to adapt and change with the times too, just like a lot of other industries do.
Yeah, it's funny because I had to learn all about the Facebook and the you know, putting things on Google ads and stuff like that, where the younger generation, it's a piece of cake. You know, they're used to the technology more than I guess I am, but yeah, I've been learning and educating myself better. But you know, if we still do use the newspaper, but we don't use it as often because everybody is online and everybody is putting their wants to put their homes on Facebook because it's such a big advertising. You get so many quicker results. But yeah, you know, we're using drones now on some unique properties, and we never used drones before. And last time I was here, I don't think we even had drones, or they may have had them at the early stages. But yeah, we have to adapt to the media that's people are using, and you know, we still like to use newspaper because there are people that still read the newspaper, but I think it's all going digital, and you know, that's okay. We're learning. I'm learning. You
mentioned about new agents, and that's you know, one of the interesting things. You're a broker, and you know, people may think, oh, they refer to like real estate broker, but really, you know, you're the broker for your agency, and then you have agents that work underneath you. But there's a lot of them, a lot of people to keep track of, and you know, somebody wants to sell their house or go look to buy a house. You know, how do you determine like who's the right agent for you, or do you guys pick that, or does somebody kind of pick that out themselves?
Every once in a while, we do get calls, or I do, and I will give them to a particular agent. But you know, the new agents that we brought in, for instance, have different you know, niches that they're social circles or whatnot. But you do get to pick you know, certain listings for certain people. Maybe it's because their specialty is commercial, or it could be they're just really good with residential under a certain price range. So it does get interesting when you don't, you know, we have so many people that would want that listing, but some people aren't perfect for that listing because they're not, you know, maybe not as, it's not their niche, you know.
Yeah, you mentioned, you know, certain social circles and things like that, and it seems like so much of it is relationship driven. I mean, you know, maybe somebody has kids at a particular elementary school, so they know all the parents at that elementary school and can form those relationships and help them, those folks. So it seems, you know, it is important to have people different walks of life and then different parts of town, things like that.
That's exactly right. We have some agents in their 80s, and we have some agents in their 20s, and they both have different social circles, or just like maybe their husband's a lawyer, and maybe so they have. It's good to get that diversification, and you know, getting the younger. We have, you know, our 4 new agents are younger, and they have a different, you know, clientele than I do. You know, it's just a different, you know, I'm 53 I should say, but so I have a different clientele than maybe they do, but it's good to have a broad range in case we do get that cold call where someone needs, you know, and we could place them with an agent that makes sense. You know,
you mentioned being 53, and you came into, you know, the industry and the family business kind of, you know, a number of years ago at a relatively early age. And other than the technology, what other changes have you seen that, you know, maybe either presented challenges or opportunities through the years here in the real estate market?
Well, you know, you see the cycles. And so the one thing that I've been through in 2009 was the first economic real downturn where we had to adjust. But, you know, we've seen the market when you put a house on the market and it goes in five hours, and then you have markets where in 2009 we didn't get a call for 4 months, you know, so you go see the changes that way. I think, you know, it's interesting, like the interest rates are at a historic low, and when I started they were probably, you know, 8 or 9%. Now they're 3.5%. So you see changes there. But it's all about relationships. I mean, not much has changed in terms of the sales other than the marketing, because it's all about getting to know someone and really identifying what they need and what they want. And that hasn't changed, but for the most part, it's just you know, the swing in markets. And right now we're in a good market, and I hope it continues. Last year, as a whole, as our community, our real estate agencies around had good years. But you know, the one thing I think that's different the last couple years is price ranges vary. Like anything over 400, it's a tough sell right now because you're not always getting the appraisal to work out, and we don't have a lot of buyers moving in. And you know, so that's the big challenge we've had now, where you know, with the demographics and with the economics, the higher end homes are harder to sell. So we have to emphasize a lot of marketing and a lot of out-of-town marketing. So that's another thing that social media does. It allows us to go outside our market pretty easy. But those are probably the biggest changes, I think.
We need to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue talking about trends in the real estate markets and what we might expect here this spring. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
Tractor trailers are some of the most dangerous vehicles on the road. There are federal rules for load sizes, driver's hours, and maintenance for a reason. When big rigs don't follow these rules, entire families can be torn apart. We have the talent and the resources to take on these large companies. Hopefully, through our work, families are being helped and trucking companies are getting the message about safety. Bordas and Bordas, fighting for justice.
Hi, Banks did great today. He looks great after his spa day.
For being such a good boy, we'll take these two.
Great.
Thanks to my free Casasa cashback checking account from Belmont Savings Bank, my Casasa cash is paying for my dog's treats.
Casasa pays you cash back on everyday debit card purchases, plus refunds on ATM withdrawal fees nationwide. Open your account today at Belmont Savings Bank to take back banking and enjoy monthly cash rewards with Casasa.
Welcome back to the show. I've been speaking with my guest here this week, Paull IV, who's the president and broker at Paull Associates. And Lee, you know, talking about the real estate market, and you mentioned that, you know, some of the higher priced homes above 400,000 are tough right now. But, you know, on the other hand, you know, there's not a ton of new building that's gone on here in the last, you know, say 20, 30 years, especially in the Wheeling area. For new homes, and how tough does that make it in terms of, you know, especially trying to sell to people maybe coming in from out of the area?
That's a great point, and we do have limited amount of space to build. And you know, in the 90s there was building going on all around, and it was a very, you know, fun time to be in real estate. Now we just can't seem to find the land that has all the utilities, and I think most people today, when they want to build a new home, they want to make sure they have public sewer and public water, and when you get outside into the county and areas, it's just tough to find that. If you're going to build a $500,000 home, you know, you want to make sure you have all the high-speed cable and you know, all the utilities. So it's a challenge, and we need someone, you know, development to open a development where we could, you know, sell lots again, and we can see some new construction.
Of course, a lot of talk about the GC&P development that Kevin Coyne and his group are looking at right there on top of the hill above Bethany Pike. And, You know, how does a potential development like that affect the market? You know, if there's development of homes and perhaps even a whole kind of community center there.
If he's successful in getting that project going, I think you'll see a huge influx of new construction and buyers. You know, because I know I have several clients that just say they can't find the proper or the right land, and if that development does get approved, you're going to see a lot of new construction where people, not only from outside the area, but people that have always wanted to build a home, build their home up on the hill. Yeah.
You know, some economic developments in the area. You know, the closure of OVMC. You know, loss of jobs, that type of thing, always can affect things. The real estate market included, and then you know, things like potential cracker coming, things like that could help swing things the other way. You know, how do you see, you know, those types of things, job losses or perhaps even addition of jobs? How does that affect you in the real estate market?
Well, it's definitely making us adjust. You know, it's terrible, the OVMC closing. You know, we lost a lot of good docs that had to pick up and move. And a lot of employees, for that matter, in different departments of the hospital. But you know, hopefully with the cracker plant opening and, you know, the construction going on for the years that it is, we will get some, you know, executives and people that want to move into the area, not just people that are renting, because our rental market's tough too. We can't, it's tough to find good rentals. They're building hotels, and people are putting some development into some condo complexes, but ultimately, right now, what we're seeing is a lot of investors buying the $50,000 to $60,000, $70,000 homes and putting workers in those, and you know, making good money. But it's definitely been an adjustment when you lose an employer like OVMC, because a lot of people did have to move.
You know, with spring quickly approaching here, you know, what do you see for the real estate market here as we head in toward March and into the spring and summer months?
The rates are great, and I think that's the main thing, is if they continue to stay around the 3.5 to 3.75, it's really historic that they've lasted this long and haven't gone up. But I think it's going to be a good year. Last year was a good year, and the rates were actually a little higher. So I look for it to be a good year. You know, we have an early spring, it looks like, you know, so we've had sales in January and February when we typically don't, because it's usually ice and snow and people don't want to get out and look at homes or get their house ready to show. But I think we're starting off with you know, I think it's going to be a very good year, and so far it's been a great year, but I think the whole year looks to be good.
I want to talk to you about both people buying homes and selling homes. Let's start off with buying.
Sure.
Right? Someone, maybe somebody looking to buy a home for the first time. Good idea to go to the bank first before coming to see you, or is it better to come to you and then like, hey, let's get that process started with the bank?
I would recommend anyone that's going to buy a home go to their bank of choice and get pre-approved, because most sellers today, when they get a contract, they want to see that pre-approval letter within a day or two, just to make sure they're not, you know, wasting time and maybe selling their house thinking that's going to go through, but that couple or individual can't afford it. So I think pre-approval letters from your lending institution is very important to start first.
Also probably gives people a good idea too. I mean, you may think you can afford a certain level of home, and you may find out, well, I can actually afford a little bit more, or maybe not as much as I thought I could, and you're looking at the right houses then.
Exactly. We've had people do that all the time, where they're looking at a $150,000 house and they love it, and then they go to the bank the next day and their credit is whatever it is, and they can only afford a $120,000 house. And so that's why it does save time, not only with us, but saves them time, and you know, they don't have to have any you know, just they won't be as upset going to you know, with that, going to look at houses if they get pre-approved.
Let's talk about the other side, selling a home. Okay, someone wants to sell their house. What ducks should they have in a row before coming to you saying, hey, I want to list my house?
Well, I always recommend that when you get your house ready, you should declutter. You should make sure that everything in the house that is, you know, broken, fix it up. Take a look at the major items, because some of the major items you may want to fix before you sell. You might not get that out of the sale. So you want to make sure that everything is in order. You know, if anything needs fixed, you fix it right away and get everything ready to go. But you want to make sure that you know, you're just ready. When you go to put the house on the market, you're going to have traffic in your house. You make sure that it's ready to go.
One thing I've always wondered about is, you know, cosmetic, you know, improvements. You know, for example, you know, I've looked at some either townhouses or houses in the past, and people are like, we just painted the whole place. And I look at it and think, gosh, I don't even like the colors. I'm gonna have to paint it all again myself.
That's right.
And they just put all this money into it. I mean, good idea to do stuff like that to spruce it up, or maybe, you know, kind of just a waste of money.
Well, I recommend if you have a wall that needs painted because it's been nicked up, you paint it, because paint is really kind of inexpensive compared to like putting in a new furnace or a new roof. So, you know, touching up paint is something that I would recommend. If there's a hole in the carpet, replace the carpet. If not, if the carpet just needs steam clean, get it cleaned. And if anything is broken, I think that's the big thing, because the home inspection is going to tell all. And you know, 99% of the people that buy a house today get a home inspection. So if something's broke, you might as well fix it. But you know, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to put on a new roof, because just because it's an older roof but it's not leaking doesn't mean you have to put a new roof on. But sometimes it helps, but very rarely do we see that.
Well, Lee, I really appreciate you being here, talking to all the viewers about the real estate market, and certainly wish you and your company all the best here in 2020.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
We need to take a break. When we come back, I'll be wrapping up with sports. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show. When bad things happen, you need a law firm that has a record of superior results. A firm that is ready to fight for you when you can't fight alone. When you need help, Bordas & Bordas will answer the call.
Bordas & Bordas, fighting for justice. When reviewing your oil and gas offers or royalty check statements, do you wonder, am I being offered a fair amount? Do I feel comfortable reading the statement? Do I have peace of mind? If you answered no to these questions, you need Bordas Mineral Management. Our passion is helping mineral owners protect and expand their mineral wealth. Our examiners tell you whether you're being treated fairly and getting paid what is rightfully yours. Bordas Mineral Management. Be protected. Have peace of mind.
Welcome back to the show. It's time to talk sports, and wouldn't you know it, the Pittsburgh Penguins have moved into first place this week in the division. You know, any team with a healthy Sidney Crosby has a chance, and you know, the Penguins may be peaking at the right time. You know, getting some guys in the back into the lineup. You know, getting some good play there, and you know, I like that the Penguins were willing to make a big in-season trade, trying to get help for Crosby up in there on that top line, and you know. The window for professional sports organizations to win championships, you know, is so small. I mean, you get a great player, you know, a once-in-a-generation type player, and you kind of have to capitalize on it during those years, because you're not going to always have that. A great example, you know, the Golden State Warriors in basketball. You know, they had this 5-year run where they had Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and then they added Kevin Durant to the mix, Draymond Green's in there. And then all of a sudden, that window just disappears because you get a couple guys hurt, somebody leaves in free agency. And all of a sudden now they're the worst team in the league this year. The Penguins have done a good job with staying competitive, being in the thick of things, always being in the playoff hunt. And when you give yourself enough chances, when you have great players like Sidney Crosby, like Malkin, you're going to have an opportunity to win some championships during those years. So, kudos to the Penguins organization for continuing to put a good team out there on the ice, and we'll, see what happens as we head into the spring and see if they're able to make a run at another Stanley Cup trophy. So. Be fun to watch. Speaking of teams that are kind of trying to right the ship, WVU basketball team having a really fine season, but struggled as of late. 3 losses in a row in conference play. Losing at Oklahoma, losing to Kansas at the Coliseum in Morgantown, and losing at Baylor. And of course, as I mentioned, on the show heading into that stretch, Kansas and Baylor, you're talking about the number 3 team in the country, the number 1 team in the country. So, tough run there for the Mountaineers, but lost all 3 of them. But rebounded nicely this week with the win over Oklahoma State at home at the Coliseum. And, shake up in the lineup there for Bob Huggins, inserting Taz Sherman into the starting lineup after he really closed out the loss against Baylor in a really nice fashion by hitting some threes and making some shots. And Also, getting Deuce McBride into the starting lineup, and something had to happen. With 3 losses in a row. And the biggest thing I think with the Mountaineers is that they hustle, they play great defense, they rebound, they have some size. I've talked about all those things all year, but like, who's going to be the scorer? And they really just didn't have one. So you can let down a little bit on one spot in your lineup in basketball on the defensive end a little bit. You can let down a little bit some rebounding, but if that guy can score, at the end of the day, you got to score more points than the other team. And if you don't have somebody that's a real scoring threat, so if Taz Sherman's the type of guy that can give the Mountaineers, 14 to 18 points on an every night basis, it makes sense to have him in that starting lineup as a guy that can shoot the basketball and put it in the hole. And then Deuce McBride is somebody, although not necessarily the greatest game, his first game back into the starting lineup, but he's the type of guy too that can score at times. And so I think it's important that he got them into the lineup. It'll be interesting to see that other spot. Culver started off the game on the bench with Matthews in the starting lineup in the second half. They were flipped by Coach Huggins. Matthews on the bench, Culver in the starting lineup. Which way that'll go, I kind of tend to think that it'll end up being Culver in the starting lineup to give you 2 big guys down there with Culver and Schwebe. But speaking of Shibwe, I mean, he's really had a really nice year too, but just he's another guy that's, again, inconsistent on the offensive end, pulls down a lot of rebounds, but just, if they can find a way to get, more consistency from him on the offensive end to get him to give you 15 points a night, that could really make a difference as well. So it'll be fun to watch what the Mountaineers can do down the stretch. The Big 12 tournament will obviously be very competitive with Baylor and Kansas in the mix there and some other teams as well like Texas Tech, but I think the Mountaineers can make a run still. Coach Mike Tomlin in the news this week, Myles Garrett, Cleveland Browns defensive player who hit Mason Rudolph in the head with his helmet last season, resurfaced again, alleging that Mason Rudolph had used a racial slur. And good for Mike Tomlin, for going on the air on ESPN and saying, hey, you guys should have never given this guy a forum to talk about this again. And look, there was no racial slur. I would have heard about it. I was on the field. I was talking to players, talking to people in the Browns organization. If a racial slur had been used, you bet they would have brought it up to me at that time. They didn't, and this just didn't happen. So good for him for standing up for Mason Rudolph. It's one of the reasons I like Mike Tomlin so much as a coach and as a leader of the organization, even though at times people were critical of him. And this time of year, February, end of February, as we head toward March, a lot of basketball going on. High school basketball tournaments, sectional and regional play will be underway for girls and boys here. Go out and catch a game. These kids, put a lot of time and effort into it, and I got to watch some of the girls' OVAC championship games a couple weeks ago, and they really, some fine performances, some great players around the Valley this year on both the girls and boys side. So get out and see a game if you haven't yet. And then, of course, don't forget, the Mountain East Conference Tournament will be in West Bank Arena again this year on both the men's and women's side. Fun to go see the West Liberty teams locally and some of the other teams from the conference here in Wheeling. So take the opportunity to do that. Thanks for tuning in again this week. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you again next time on the Jamie Bordas Show.